All right, so this morning we are continuing looking at our novel study unit, and today we're going to talk about a commonly used image or metaphor that teachers will often utilize to discuss the way that stories unfold in novels. And this is called Story Mountain. So today's mini lecture, I guess we could call it Climbing Story Mountain. So in your mind, or you can even take a sheet of paper on your notebook. You can draw a mountain shape, and normally what I'll do is, as you're going up, there's kind of some little minor peaks along the left hand side of your mountain tracking up, and then you come to the very top of the mountain, the peak, and then you drop off on the right hand side. And that kind of image is often used to describe the arc of a story within a novel. So at the beginning, you're starting at the bottom of the mountain on the left-hand side of your image. That's where you usually have the characters introduced. Initial setting will be discussed, and the very first major problem or trouble is called the inciting incident. And most stories will traditionally follow this pattern where at the beginning they're gonna introduce whoever the main character is to you. The character might have a companion or they might be on their own. And then they're going to describe the location. They're going to describe some of the characters' driving motivations, their passions, maybe what they're hoping to accomplish or what they think they're hoping to accomplish. And then there will be some sort of a moment where something happens to challenge the character, and that's the inciting incident. So that's the first section. That's kind of the first component of most novels. Then we move into the second section, and this section is what we call the rising action section. So if we're looking at that image of the story mountain in our mind, this is the section on the left-hand side of the mountain where we have those multiple miniature peaks or minor peaks, and each one of these minor peaks or minor juts up within the mountain, they represent these conflicts that the character is going to be encountering. So these are troubles or tests that kind of drive the character's development forward. Now, before that happens, if you're dealing with a classic mythological story, or even kind of fantasy story or an adventure story, there's almost always a portal. And the portal is it's kind of like a moment of choice, but essentially what it is this is where the character commits to their adventure. And so in order to move forward, they have to step through that portal. So we could say this is the opportunity to engage the adventure. The main character must step through the portal to move on. And the portal may well be metaphorical. It could be very, very literal. So if you think of the example of Alice in Wonderland, obviously the portal is Alice falling down the rabbit hole, right? If you think about The Hobbit, the novel The Hobbit, the portal would be Bilbo deciding to join Gandalf and the dwarves and running out of his house even without his handkerchief to start this adventure. So there's always this kind of moment of choice, and the portal is that moment of choice. Now, this device, this novel study device, the portal, is classic within mythological stories. So you should always kind of have your eyes open for this moment of choice, essentially this moment of your old normal life or this new adventurous life, and you've got to move through the portal in order to progress the story. So once the main character has tackled the portal and decided to accept the challenge of the adventure, this is when the foils begin to be introduced into the story. And now foils, as we know, these are opposing forces. These are forces that are opposite of the character. Now they can either be enemies to the character, or they can be competitors to the character. They can even be friends to the character who challenge the character and teach the character something about themselves. So that's why we call them foils, because they're not just opposing forces. They're kind of balancing forces or testing forces or mirroring forces that help us to understand and get a deeper look at the character that we're following through this adventure. So then commonly the cast will begin to gather around the character. So if you think about the Lord of the Rings as a story to use as a comparison here, you know, at the beginning it's just the hobbits, right? It's just Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. And then Aragorn joins them, and then they arrive at Rivendell, and then all of these other heroes are called to the quest, right? Are basically they join with Frodo to form the Fellowship of the Rings. So that's kind of an example of the cast of heroes kind of coming into alignment with that character. Um, and then the character is going to move forward, and then as the story continues, there will be a lot of little tests, a lot of little challenges that are put in front of the character. And you know, at each one of those moments the character kind of has to make this choice to push on or to go back. And so each one of these little testing actions teaches the main character a skill or a wisdom, or even just proves their grit, and they ultimately decide to keep moving on. I'll just go through here, put some periods in. You guys know I've got that whole attention to detail thing going on. And so then also within this rising action section of the story, which was kind of the main section of the story, there will be many twists and turns. There will be many tests, and there might be some unexpected developments, and those are all there to kind of keep the story interesting and to drive the growth of the character forward. Okay, so let's move to the next major component of our story mountain. So once you reach to the top, this is called the climax. And this is where the hero must face their fear or defeat their ultimate foil. This is it, and this is also the most exciting or crucial part of the story. Or maybe we won't say part, we'll say moment. Good. And this is also where the story is kind of solved, if you will. So that major issue that the character has undertaken will be either succeeded at or failed at, and you can find both examples in novels. And then from there we go into what is called the resolution, and the resolution is kind of this falling away story action. You know, you've had the big moment, and now you kind of want to see that everybody ends up okay, and so all of the remaining loose threads are tied off, and then you've got, you know, that classic trope of the hero or heroine riding off into the sunset successful, right? So Story Mountain is a good way for us to consider stories. So as we move through The Alchemist, I'll be asking you to track the components of Story Mountain. So let's go to the next page of my worksheet here. Your writing task in your notebooks as, yeah, we'll put a comma there, it's a PLMP, as we read The Alchemist. And we always, we're following APA format here, so we always italicize the title of the novel. You will track the parts, or the stops along Story Mountain. Thus, for today, you should address the beginning section, say 1. Describe the main character. Describe the settings we have encountered so far. And setting is one of the things that shifts quite often within the story. So you'll kind of have to track that, and you can almost kind of make a map that shows the locations where that story is going, and then explain what the inciting incident was. And finally, what can we predict about Santiago and his story mountain? So it's kind of fun sometimes to try to guess some of the things that will happen in the course of the story. Okay, so we have talked about Story Mountain, and we have discussed your writing task. So this one, you don't need to submit this right now, because you're going to continue to build this this kind of like a Story Mountain journal. Let's call it a Story Mountain journal. That's a great idea. So you will continue to build your Story Mountain journal until we've moved all the way through the novel, because obviously the journal won't be done until the story's done. So, but if you want to send me the component pieces, like as you finish your writing task today, you could send me a draft of your work. I'm happy to look at it and make any comments or corrections or editing notes that are necessary, and then you can fix it, so that when you fix your work or edit your own work, so that when you do submit the final piece at the end, it will be as polished and as, well edited and well thought out as possible. Okay, so welcome to Story Mountain, The Alchemist. Let's push forward.